Hello everyone, this is Patrick DuChene. This is a follow-up video or tutorial for webinar 1. We had some technical issues with the first webinar. The audio recorded and the video did not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you everything we did in webinar 1 with a little bit of condensed version so it doesn't take a very long time for you to get through it. But I am going to be thorough, so I make sure I don't leave anything out from the first one. So the first thing we talked about in the first webinar was creating prototypes to reduce your drawing setup time. So the main reason I want to touch on this and show you how to save time is a lot of users I see, probably 85 to 90% of users I meet and I talk to, are not using prototypes for their drawings, which is taking a lot of time to set up drawings. So let's work through how to do this to save you some time every drawing. So traditionally, and what most users are doing right now is opening up a paper space. Let's just say 24 by 36. Obviously, these are all the default prototypes that comes with Dynascape, which is great. I mean, I've never really had to make too many different ones other than that, so they've done a good job. So in your component library, you have your title blocks. So I like to use the 5th one, which is a pretty popular one, I think. It's very simple, clean. So we'll size this to the paper or the drawing limits. So the first thing we want to do is decide where or what we want to have on your drawing when you present it to your clients. So we would have logos, we would have your certification, we would have any copyright information. So obviously the way you bring in your images is, now this is the first thing I want to touch on about images. Whenever you save images for plants, whenever you save images for logos, always keep them in this pictures file, and it's very easy to get to. You just go to your desktop, you click on pictures. I have one for logos and certifications. In this folder is all the logos of anybody I ever do work for, any certifications. They're in the right spot, they're in the same spot. You know where to find them, and this should never, the location of these images should never change, because in your drawing, if we bring in an image, let's just bring this in, let's bring in the Dynascape logo. When we look this up, this has a pathway to that location on your computer. If that logo is moved, this will not show up. So that can cause some difficulties. So don't change the location. So you'll set your drawing up. You'll bring in any logos, certifications. You know, you'll put in your scale, your drawing by, checked by, your date, date of print, all that information. And what I'm seeing is each time people are starting a new drawing, they're doing this whole process of putting all their logo or all their certifications, their logos, and it can be time consuming depending on how much information you put on your drawing. So this could take 5 minutes, this could take 20 minutes. I've heard of people spending 30 minutes on this because they have a bunch of things they want on a drawing. So let's get away from that. Let's change that so you can get going on a drawing extremely quickly. So I'm going to launch that. I'm going to launch that paper space again that I like. So again, you're going to just rescale your drawing, your title block to your sheet. Now I'm going to kind of create a dummy prototype, and then I'm going to show you one that I made for Dynascape. So let's say we are Dynascape software, and we're going to be doing a project for someone. So the first thing we do, we'll bring in our logo. Now, obviously this is not centered on the X or Y axis in this box. Traditionally, to move an image, you would mess with the X and Y axis. If you change this to 320, it'll move it to the right. If you would change it to like 300, it would move it to the left. I had some complications with that, moving things exactly where I wanted to. So what I came up with was kind of a shortcut. So what I do to move my rasters around a drawing is I'll draw a box around them. And when I want to move this image or raster, I'll take this box and I'll move it wherever I want that image to be moved. And then I'll go to imaging, and when you hover over these icons, it tells you exactly what you're doing. You move and resize an existing raster. So I'm going to find the logo that I want to move. So this is why it's very important to name your rasters or your images exactly what they are, because on a large drawing you could have several JPEG images in here, and if you don't have these described correctly, it's going to be difficult figuring out what to move. So obviously we only have one in here, so we know it's a Dynarscape logo. So I'm going to put on my inference settings, and I'm just going to drag this into this box. So that's the easiest way to move this. So if I wanted to center this on this box, all I do is I'll draw a line through this. I'll draw a line through this box. I'll highlight this, and I'll grab the center point of this box here where it says midpoint. I'll drag it here where this says midpoint. So now this box is perfectly centered inside that square. So now we can go back. We can select that logo we want to move and throw it right back in that square. So now it's perfectly centered. So that's a great way to move things around. If I wanted to move this somewhere else on this drawing, I don't have to necessarily be even looking at that image I want to move. All you want to do is find it in that raster list and you can move it. But let's put it back where it belongs. So let's add a few more images up here. So I kind of made a folder for this. So I made like a conceptual logos and certifications file. So let's put in the American Horticultural Society. So you see how I have all of these very well described? I will know exactly what these are when I open them up in my raster list. So I want to bring my first image in, but I want to have two across the top. Let's say I want to have two next to each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Actually, a little bit smaller yet. Let's make it just a tiny bit smaller. Okay, that'll work. Alright, so what I want to do is bring another image in, and I want to bring it in as close to the same size sitting next to this as I possibly can, because I want to have a nice clean layout. So I'll copy that box, I'll drag it over, and then I'm going to go look for another image. So let's bring in actually I have that mislabeled. It's the Ohio Nursery Landscape Association. So let's click on our inference settings. Let's bring this in. So we lucked out because those have the same aspect ratio. So that's perfect. So you see what we're doing here. We're creating very similar size images. So if we wanted to bring in more images that are squares, we could copy these squares and bring some more in. Now, I know that these may not work. So let's bring up the scenario of wanting to put the Technoseal in the middle of these. So when I hit this situation where this is not the same size as those, I'll just delete this square and I'll draw a new square around this. and then I'm going to drag this square, and I'm just going to center it right between these other two. You can get very precise. I mean, that's pretty darn close for an example for the webinar. So let's go down to our TechnoSeal, select that image, and let's throw that image back in this square. So that's nice and centered. Let's bring another one in. Let's go to American Society of Landscape Architects. So I'll just kind of bring it in where I, kind of centered, which that's actually pretty darn good. But if you really wanted to be precise about it, you would go up to this one, find the center point. Find the center point, draw that line down, and then I'll draw my box around this. And you can see I'm real close. See that the center point of that's the top line. So to be perfect, we'll bring that over. We'll select our ASLA, and we'll bring that back over. So all of these now are pretty much perfectly centered. So again, I'm putting things in this prototype that I'm going to have on every single drawing, so you're not having to do this every time. So the scale of this drawing obviously is 1 inch equals 10, 24 by 36. So I'm going to go up to my title text. I'm going to go to my scale, and I'm going to type in 1 inch equals 10 feet. I'm going to say drawn by Patrick J. DuChene. So these will show up every single time you do a drawing. Let's say you have a copyright that you want to put down here. You could bring in your copyright information. You could type it in if you wanted to. So if you wanted to bring a scale in here, you go to your title block accessories. You could throw a scale in here. Obviously, you're not going to throw a north arrow because the orientation of your drawings could change. So now what we want to do, now that we have everything in here we want on every single drawing, we're going to go up and save it as our own prototype. So you have a couple different options, a few different options. The first is obviously save it as a drawing, which we're going to do. Let's put it in our webinar our webinar folder. Let's call this Webinar 1 Practice Drawing. So in case the power goes out, in case you'll be able to get back to this to modify it. So the other option is you save it as a JPEG, Adobe PDF that you can email. But right here, prototype is where you want to save this. So let's call this Webinar 1 Prototype. Then we'll click up into prototypes. I'm going to call that Webinar 1 Prototype. Save. Okay. So now what we should be able to do is close this out, go up into our raster, or not a raster, but our prototype list. So here is the prototype we just drew. Now, the difference is if we go up and if we open up the drawing that we did, Webinar 1 Practice Drawing, here's the difference. It's the same thing. This was the drawing that I could modify this if I wanted to. This prototype, I cannot change this. And the good reason, after the webinar, one of the users emailed me and asked if when you do a prototype, if this locks it, and it's yes. What happened was because she doesn't do prototypes, she just builds these each time. She had some plants that when she grouped those plants to color or to label, she accidentally grouped them with, oh, I'm in the wrong drawing. Copy these over and bring them. she copied those, or she grouped these with her title block or her title. So then when she went to color or label, she had all of these groups. So that's another good thing about the prototypes, is you cannot group the title block with the plant material. So what you'll have then, you could build these for all different size sheets. You know, this is one that I kind of custom built, where I can go in here, I can type in the name, date. So this is kind of more, this is quite advanced by exploding and rebuilding and creating new prototypes. But for all intents and purposes, use what you've been given to start out, practice your prototypes, and you'll have them like for different scales. So you could have a 24 by 36, 1 inch equals 10, 1 inch equals 8, 1 inch equals 4. You can create an 8.5 by 11. So what this enables you to do now is, when you start up a drawing, you can launch the software, and go select your prototype that you want to use, and you're done. You're ready to draw. Saves you, I mean, that took us what, 10-15 minutes to do that. It would be a little bit quicker if I wasn't doing a tutorial. So that's prototypes. Make sure you save the drawing somewhere. So if you ever wanted to go back and change it or update those, you can update it, because you cannot change any information on this now that it's kind of locked. So the next thing I want to talk about is plant packets. Plant packets is something that's very easy to do, but I still am seeing some users that are not doing it, or they don't know how to do it. So let's just go over plant packets. So I created a drawing just to kind of speed up the process. It's called my plant packet practice drawing. Now I want to get rid of a few of these things because this is kind of cheating here. This was from the last webinar, so let me get rid of a couple of things. Okay, so I already have some plants in here. I have them labeled. When you go to export, right under File, Export Plant Picture Catalog. One of the most recent updates they did with design was right here where it says plants marked with an X do not have an image. So if you were to go through these and you see one with an X at the end, it means there's no image for it. Now, these are going to default from Horticopia. I like to use all custom images because there are some good images in Horticopia, and then there are some not so good images, and I would prefer that I use the ones that I select so I can really have a good control over what clients see. So even though there are no X's, I still want to just go down and double check and make sure each one of these has the image I want. These show up because I use them so often, the software just remembers. So you're going to name this plant catalog or plant packet. So again, repetition is the key to productivity with obviously anything, but the more you can do the same things over and over again when you're drawing, the better. And I'm not meaning the same type of design, but I mean the same methodology. So every one of mine I'll do, let's say we're going to do some work for Joe Salimi. So we will put Salimi Residence Plant Selection Packet. You can control whether you show common or botanical names or both. I prefer common names because most people really don't even care what plants are going in the project, let alone needing to know the botanical name and the Latin name. That the least amount of things the customer can have to get hung up on, the better. So I just show the common name. We'll save this. Let's create a new folder for Joe Salimi. So Salimi Residence. So again, let's name this file now Salimi Residence Plant Selection packet. This just saves you each time trying to decide what to name a plant packet. So here's our plant packet. So let's close that out. Now if we go to our folder under Salimi Residence, we have our plant packet. Nicely organized, nicely labeled, straight, simple. Remember, there's my Salimi Residence Plant Selection packet. So you can email this to somebody. Now, when labeling a drawing, this takes me into plant labeling and how I do plant packets and plant images now. So, you know, the traditional way of doing it is going and selecting on search for a plant image based on a plant label. I would select Winter Gem Boxwood. It will go through Horticopia and it'll pull up the Horticopia. Now, I prefer not showing that image. So I'll go to Custom Images. I'll browse. This is what I was talking about kind of in the beginning, where this is my folder with all my pictures. So these are pictures over the years that I have found that I like. I think they give good representation of what the plant material is. So let's go down to Winter Gem Boxwood, which is right there. We'll insert that image. So this is the traditional way of doing it. So what I would do then is I would create myself a guideline along the left, or like an axis. My mouse is kind of lagging today for some reason. I don't know why, so I'm trying to catch these. So then what I would do, or what everybody does, is let's go to Walkersville Catmint. We'll pick up another and we'll insert another image. But here's where I started having real issues, because I like my images looking real nice and crisp and clean and organized. This spacing isn't what I would want. I would want that a little bit tighter up there so I could fit more. So what I would end up doing is I would select all of these, and this kind of goes back to how I was showing you move raster images. So I would move this box up. Actually, not that far. That's a little too far. Let's move the box down a little bit like that. I'd go find my Walkersville Catmint, put it in that box. So you can kind of control these, but then when you get into a plant, let's see if we can find one that's not a good size. Let's go find Okami Cherry, and let's try to make that look. See what happens? Because of the aspect ratio, it's not going to work with this close axis here. So I've seen people who are very good at this. They lay them out very nicely. I could just never do it where it was quick and speedy. So what I thought of doing was, if our plant packet is so nicely organized, why not try to bring that into the drawing and save me a lot of work? So what I've done now, let's get rid of our guideline. Let's get rid of those three plants. Select them and remove them. Remove, remove, remove. There's a website. I want everybody to write this website down. pdf2jpg.net, which is PDF to JPEG. It's free. You don't even have to put your email address. You don't get emails or spam or anything. It's a free tool to convert PDFs to JPEGs. So it's very simple to use. You click Choose File. You go and find that plant packet. There's some options for average, good, or excellent quality. Just use good. You don't need excellent. So you click it, convert PDF to JPEG. So what it's done is it's created two pages, just like the plant packet has two pages. Page 1, page 2. This is 2 pages of JPEG. So let's view that. and we want to save this image into Joe's folder. So let's go to the Salimis and let's save that. Let's click on page 2 and we'll save that into his folder also. We're in Salimi, page 2. It's great. You know which one it is. Save it. Now, everybody will have this program because DynEscape only runs on Windows. So in your computer, you have a program called Microsoft Paint. And what we want to do is we want to crop this out, because what this has given us, I don't like mine having this up top, page 1 of 2. I don't want it to say all this at the bottom. I just want it clean. I want the 6 images and that's it. So if you right click on this, now you can do this in Photoshop too and crop it, but if not everybody has Photoshop, this is the way everybody can do it. You right click, open with Microsoft Paint. In Microsoft Paint is a crop tool now, which I'm not 100%. Let's see. Yeah, see, I just did this the other day, so I could. Okay, so let's select. You're going to select a rectangle, and you're going to right click and crop this, and you're going to save that. You can actually, let's go to save as, and we'll save over this old file. It's going to ask you if you want to save over it. Let's save over it. Okay, let's bring in the second page. Open it. Select the rectangle. Try to keep these margins on the outside, like the distance between this line and the dashed line is the same on every one, so they're very similar sized. So we're gonna crop that one, and we're gonna save that one as page 2. So we can close this. So now all we have is a cropped image. 1, 2. So we go to our drawing. Now all we need to do is bring these in. So let's go to Joe's folder. Click on the first one, and let's just bring that whole page of the packet in. Now you'll have to play with this and decide how large you want these images in relation to your drawing. But what I'll do now, and this is just kind of a recap, not a recap, but this is the same thing we were doing moving around logos, making them the same. So I'm going to copy this paper size. I'm going to bring that right underneath there. So now when I bring my second sheet in, it's the exact same size as the first sheet. So if you look at these lines, like if you were to draw a line from here up, it's pretty darn close. I mean, I like to even have all these boxes lined up. You can get lost in details, but after you've done this a couple times, you'll get real good at it. So that is, then what I'll do is I'll just draw myself a guideline across the top here. I'll send myself a guideline up from the middle, and then I'll go and I'll type in plant selections. Let's pick like a different font maybe. Let's go down to like, let's go to this one. No, City Blueprint. We'll enter that in, stretch that out a little bit, make it larger, center that, get rid of my guidelines, and you're done. Now, in one of the coloring webinars, I'm going to show you what I do. I'll draw a box around this, I'll offset the box, and then I'll color the background and shade it, and it'll make it pop. So you'll do the same thing with material images. You can bring materials in. I did the same thing with these two images that I did for these two pages. All I did was I brought in my Inca, I drew a box around it, I copied it down. So if you'll see, I can bring this right down. Whoop, 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 whoop. I brought that down, copied it onto this one, moved it up, copied it over to here, and brought those images in. So you will be able to create some very organized presentations. So this is an example of all of this is. These are the plant packet sheets lined up next to each other with a couple of miscellaneous ones over here that I brought in. Then what I'll do, like I was just saying, I'll draw a box around it, I'll offset it, I'll put a little shadow, it makes it pop a little bit. You know, you could do that with the title block, or not the title block, but the that title bar up there. So this is kind of a non-traditional way of doing plant packets and plant images, but it really speeds me up. I mean, I would spend quite a bit of time really going through my plant images, making sure they were nice and organized, but this really cuts down on time. I think I've covered everything. The one thing I wanted to show everybody, though, before I finish, is this mouse. This is called a Microsoft Explorer Touch Mouse, and I talked about this in the beginning of the last webinar. But this mouse, when I got it, it saved about it sped me up about 30 to 40% in drawing time. Underneath this gray bar is a roller bar that when you just click your mouse and flick the mouse, it zooms in until you stop. And this mouse helps me navigate around a screen very quickly. If you hold down Shift and Control and hold down the mouse roller ball, you can move a drawing all over the place. I'm getting a little bit of a lag here as soon as it stops. If you click Control and Shift and click this mouse, it will just move in and out very quickly. And this really will help with your navigation speed in a drawing. So obviously there are tools where you can zoom in and out from Dynarscape, but these are a lot faster to just go from one place to another. It happens even quicker when the computer isn't having an issue, and I think it's the webinar software. But anyway, so you can touch base with Joe if you have any follow-up questions, and he and I will make sure we field those to you very quickly, get the answers back to you. And we are working on a second webinar for the middle of December, which we have some really good topics to go over in addition to this one.